And we are back.
It's us again, the Horror Guys.
162 episodes in.
And I'm Kevin.
I'm Brian.
And we have 5 movies this week.
Four movies in a short? No, not
4
this
movies
time.
and another movie.
Because sometimes 4 just isn't enough.
That's right.
What do we got this week?
Well, we got a version of Phantom of the Opera from 1990 that was a television miniseries. And we have a movie called Threads from 1984 that's a nuclear Holocaust type reality, not quite horror.
Many people call it the scariest movie ever made.
Well, it's a horrible situation, and one called Darling from 2015, and a version of Dracula, the original living vampire, is the subtitle, and that's a brand new one from 2022. And then we have another new one that was technically released last year, The Changed,
and
Tony Todd.
Got a little announcement here. We've got copies of The Changed to give away. So sign up over at horrorbulletin.com for our weekly emails, and we will choose a number of people to win free copies of The Changed. Now, here's the thing. You actually have to read your emails to know if you've won. I recently gave away a bunch of copies of Scream 2022. Not one person responded saying, "Oh, great, send it to me."
Yeah, that's strange.
There's no point in having a giveaway if nobody wants them.
You won. Chirp, chirp, chirp.
Exactly. Yeah. I suspect we're going into the spam folder for some people.
Yeah, that seems likely. Yeah.
So, put us in your whitelist, email at horrorguys.com, and if we send you you won mail, you need to read it. Mm-hmm. All right, so I don't know. I'll probably be re-notifying the Scream winners again probably tomorrow, and the Changed winners will get it next week.
Keep trying.
Yeah, there's no point in signing up to win if you don't read your emails.
Free movies.
All right. So anyway, also along with that email list at horrorbulletin.com, this week we looked at a couple other films. We looked at 1973's The Boy Who Cried Werewolf. And boy, did that boy cry a lot.
He did, yeah. He was an annoying child.
And a 2015 documentary about sleep paralysis and night terrors called The Nightmare.
Guess some people get them bad and really
regularly
really have a problem with it.
Yeah. Then they have reenactments for movies, and they got some pretty good special effects in their dreams.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not exactly a documentary because they do a lot of reenactments and stuff, and it's fairly entertaining.
But talking to real people about them.
Real people, real stories. I don't know if it's really aliens coming into your bedroom or not, but they're true stories. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, that's what I meant. Yeah. Well, right. and for if you're wondering what we're talking about, it's a condition that some people experience. A lot of people do, even once or twice in their lives, where you're dreaming, but you're aware, you're kind of awake, but you're paralyzed.
You can't move, and you feel like there's something in the room with you, behind you usually.
And a lot of folks, they will start hallucinating, and very vivid hallucinations, and and there's some theory that UFO abduction experiences, that people, that might just be sleep paralysis that somebody experienced.
But not really alien abductions, but the people who claim they have been abducted
because there's such intense hallucinations and intense living nightmares.
All right. Well, what is more intense than a living nightmare? How about nuclear war?
Yeah, a 1984 one called Threads.
Yeah, here in the United States in 1983, we had one The Day After. Did you see that one when it came out?
I did, yeah.
I think everybody did at that point.
Uh-huh.
But UK said, hey, that's pretty lame. That's pretty weak. That's pretty timid compared to the realities of nuclear war. Let's do this one here. We'll call it Threads.
And I was reading something fairly recently about The Day After, that might have saved the world. Literally, Reagan saw that.
There's a lot going on in those days.
Yeah, Ronald Reagan saw that, and he stepped up and contacted the Soviet Union and other powers and said, "Hey, nuclear war bad. Let's not do that." And he really took some concrete steps toward reducing the risk. Because of that movie.
Awareness has a lot to do with solving some of these problems. And Yeah, this one, I think we watched it on YouTube. It's available for free. It may be available on Shudder also. I don't know anymore. But it's easy enough to find if you look for it. Just called Threads from 1984. Directed by Mick Jackson, written by Barry Hines, stars Margaret Meager, Rhys Dinsdale, and David Brierley. Hour and 52 minutes, so it's kind of a long one. And spoiler-free, we already told you there's a nuclear war. What do you need to know beyond that?
Yeah.
What happens spoiler-free?
Well, nuclear war happens in Europe. It's grim and realistic and thoroughly depressing.
Yeah, no happy ending on this one.
Yeah, sort of movie you want people in power to watch and say, yeah, let's not do that.
Yeah. Okay, well, in an urban society, our lives are woven together in a fabric. The connections that make us strong also make us vulnerable. And credits roll. Hey, that's about Threads, isn't it?
It is.
That's where the name comes from.
That's right.
Okay, in Sheffield, UK, on March 5th, Ruth and Jimmy, a young couple, watch jets flying overhead. They then make out in the car and get pregnant.
She gets pregnant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He helped.
He helped.
May 5th, we see satellite images of a Soviet convoy on the move in Iran. They blame the U.S. for prompting all this, and Ruth then tells Jimmy that she's pregnant. On May 9th, and the fighting has escalated. Jimmy's parents aren't happy to hear about the baby, but he wants to marry her anyway. The Americans promise to send forces into Iran if the Russians don't pull out. Okay, and basically we're seeing Ruth and Jimmy and their families all having this family drama stuff, and we're hearing about all this war and politics and nonsense in the background and on newspapers and newscasts and stuff like that.
But it's a lot of life going on.
It's not a war
in
story.
the meantime. Yeah. Well, because there's no war in England.
Right.
And it takes place in England.
Well, more stuff happens with Jimmy, Ruth, and the war continues to escalate, mostly off-screen. Budget was pretty limited.
Well, it's fighting,
they saved the budget for
elsewhere.
makeup later.
Yeah.
We watch Mr. Sutton, a local wartime controller, making preparations for bad things that might happen. People are talking about all those jets flying over, and before long there are nuclear war protests, there are grocery shortages, probably mostly toilet paper, but mostly things run as usual. By the 24th, the war heats up. People are packing up and leaving for the country. Jimmy's father watches the neighbors leave, and he wonders if staying might be a mistake. On the 25th, there are reports of nuclear explosions in the Middle East, and the museums start packing away their major artworks.
You know that things are bad when the museums start packing away the artworks.
Putting them in the bunker. By the 26th, the radio explains what to do with the dead bodies in the fallout shelters. It's sounding pretty bleak. Then the air raid sirens go off and people freak out. The first EMP takes out the electricity and communications. There are flashes and mushroom clouds all over Sheffield. Between 2.5 to 9 million people die in the blast, but an hour and a half later, the fallout arrives. Jimmy's parents are horribly burned, but they do survive, but then they get radiation sickness. Ruth's family is safe and well, living in the basement of their house. By the end of the first week, the government has taken control of all the food sources, but they're not organized enough to distribute it for several weeks. That's not good. They got the food, but you can't have it. The government experts and managers, along with Mr. Sutton, are trapped in the basement of the building. They're arguing about wasting food on the people who are going to die from the radiation anyway. Feed the healthy ones.
Yeah, what an awful situation to be in for them, for those people. I mean, the planners, it really...
In 10 days, the fires have gone out, but the radiation has become more of a problem than before, since all the water is now contaminated. Ruth goes outside and sees all the dead people and pets, skeletons and burnt meat. The clouds blot out the sun, it's dark all the time, and the temperature drops significantly due to the darkness. 22 days after the attack, cholera, diphtheria, and typhoid start becoming a real problem. There are 10 or 20 million corpses laying around just in London. The guys trapped in the government building have all suffocated by this point. Nobody can dig them out. And then things go downhill from there as starvation, the cold, and radiation takes their toll. Things revert to a medieval level of living. And then winter sets in. Happy endings.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Well, the first 50 minutes show a pretty believable political situation. The rest is after the attacks. It's a sort of documentary and sort of a drama, and it flashes back and forth between the two styles. So, the USA and the Soviets and a hot spot in Iran. That could never happen, right? The political stuff sounds pretty dated, except it's not, really. Only the specifics are. The stuff that goes on before the attack looks very believable and realistic, and we saw a lot of the same stuff back when COVID was at its peak. You know it's bad when the museums pull the paintings off the walls to put them somewhere protected. The special effects are pretty much non-existent, but they make the good use of stock footage and other sources, and it's pretty hard to believe they aired this as is on BBC TV back in '84. It's pretty gory, and even worse because it's also believable. Definitely not a fun film. This is what kids like us watched on TV in the '80s, predicting the future, and you wonder why people are messed up. And they wonder why we prefer horror films. Monsters and slashers are also tame compared to this kind of reality. Let's not do that.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Well, then we had
Phantom of the Opera.
Phantom of the Opera.
A version from 1990.
Yeah.
Took me a long time to find this because I was misremembering it.
You remembered this from being on TV and you wanted me to find it for you, and you couldn't remember who was in it.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the main actor, and
Directed by
we did.
Tony Richardson, written by Gaston Leroux and Arthur Kopit, stars Terry Polo, Charles Dance, Tywin Lannister himself, Burt Lancaster and Adam Stork. 2 freaking hours and 48 minutes. This was a mini-series combined into one feature-length film. It was long.
It was kind of long.
And you can find this one on YouTube also. Set aside a whole batch of popcorn because it's long. All right, spoiler-free. It's pretty great, but it's pretty long. They fluffed it out a bit to make it a 2-night television miniseries. The acting is all excellent. The settings are amazing since they were actually able to use the real Paris Opera House, and they manage a decent body count while not making it too graphic for television. It's long, but if you like the Phantom story, it's a pretty good one. So, how about some spoilery synopsis? What happens?
Play up the spoilery. You want me to spoil it?
Read the whole thing.
But Phantom of the Opera.
Well, they're singing.
Nobody knows the Phantom of the Opera.
They're singing and they're romance and people die.
Okay,
we know this much.
The gist of the story is the same. Yeah. Well, part 1 begins as Gerard Carrari gets fired as manager of the Opera House. That afternoon, Christine shows up for her singing lessons. The Countess sent her to Gerard for singing lessons, but now she's out of luck because he's not there anymore. Elaine and Carlotta, the new owners of the Opera House, want an inventory of what's in the basement. And the man who goes down there has heard stories. He sees a man in a mask, and he falls to his death. First death.
Oops.
Yeah, you don't go in the basement.
The Phantom doesn't kill the guy. This guy just sort of like falls through the stairway in his clumsiness because he's afraid.
Yeah. Gerard explains to Elaine. Is it Elaine?
I would just say Alan.
Alan, yeah. The rules. Don't go down below, he explains, about the Phantom and his territory down there. Alan says he doesn't believe in ghosts as things start falling down around him. Gerard asks the heir if the man is dead, and Eric answers yes.
We don't see him, but he's answering from somewhere.
And Gerard, knows that he's there listening. Yeah. He clearly knows what's going on. And Gerard lets Eric know that he's been replaced and can't help the Phantom anymore. And they both hear Carlotta singing, and they both say it's terrible, which I think this gets mentioned later, too. Boy, they go on, and the Phantom just hates Carlotta's singing voice, and she's so wretched, and but she sings.
It doesn't sound that bad.
And Christine sings, and we're no opera connoisseurs, but she's a singer. I mean, it sounded like a professional opera singer.
Like, yep, that's opera.
Yeah, we couldn't, we couldn't discern, how it was so awful. But he's just, cringing at her singing. Okay, whatever.
He's a perfectionist. It's got to be just right.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Well, the two of them seem to be good friends, and the Phantom jokes about killings, but he seems like a nice guy. He does. In this, he does seem like more of a nicer guy than a monster.
Of all the Phantom of the Opera versions that I've seen, this is probably the nicest one.
Yeah, I think so. I think he is. Well, Christine gets a grunt job in the costume department working for Carlotta, and she gets a small place to live in the building, and the Phantom overhears her singing, and he is smitten. He watches her from the shadows for a few days. And Eric the Phantom appears before Christine and introduces himself in a mask. He compliments her voice, but says she's untrained, and he wants to give her secret singing lessons. The Phantom sends repeated letters to Alan demanding a box, and says that he needs to get rid of his own wife as the star of the show. Yeah, sure he's going to do that. Well, he rents out Box 5 and also keeps Carlotta as the star. Both decisions go badly.
Box 5 is supposed to be reserved for the Phantom.
Yeah.
No one can use Box 5.
Well, he don't, and yeah, it goes poorly. Yeah. Alan calls in Inspector Ledoux to help. Well, the Phantom trains Christine to sing in the evenings. She tells him about Count Philippe, and Eric says that the Count is unworthy of her. Well, the Count arrives soon after, and he hasn't forgotten about Christine. The Count throws a party at the bistro, and they always sing there. Eric says this is Christine's big opportunity. And when Christine shows at the party, everyone is stunned. She's in a dazzling dress, and she sings beautifully. And everyone says she's amazing. Well, Carlotta joins in and tries to keep the spotlight on herself, but Christine outdoes her. And the Count and Gerard are impressed. Alan offers her a job on the spot. Nice.
It worked.
She's hired, yeah.
When I sang at the party, everyone's jaw dropped.
Yes. Well, we spend about 9 hours with the Count and Christine reminiscing about their childhood together.
It may have only been 8 hours long. Boy, they did go on for a while.
Well, just every scene in this.
Every scene that could be dragged
is
out
good,
was.
but everything, they milk everything out just a little.
Did we really need flashbacks to their childhoods?
Not that much.
No.
Well, it's Christine's big night, and Carlotta gives her a special thing to drink. Well, Christine loses her voice during her solo because Carlotta messed with her. The crowd gets nasty, the Phantom gets upset, chandelier ends up falling down on the audience. That's going to hit the papers in the morning. Part 1 ends.
Yay, we're halfway. Monday night movie is over. Let's all wait for Tuesday.
Part 2 begins with the panicked stampede from the disaster at the Opera House. The Phantom has led Christine backstage to avoid trouble, and Philippe chases after them to save her. Eric leads Christine down below into his world, and they board a boat and paddle through the catacombs towards Eric's secret lair, and he sings her to sleep. The police head down there as well, but they can't find anything. It's like a labyrinth down there. 2 of them are killed with booby traps.
You know, you mentioned that he sings her to sleep. Mm-hmm. In any of the older versions of this, did any of the Phantom actors ever really sing?
No, they played organ.
You had Lon Chaney, of course, was silent. Then Claude Rains didn't sing.
I don't think they did.
Herbert Lom didn't sing. But there are all these expert singing teachers.
The musical version, of course.
Yeah, that's different. But, had the musical version been out at this point?
No.
Don't think so.
I don't think so.
Maybe.
Oh, what year did that start?
Well, this one's not a musical, though.
No,
not really.
No, it isn't. Yeah. Well, the Phantom confronts Carlotta, and, she won't be singing anymore. He drives her insane. Yeah. Gerard goes down and tells Eric to let Christine go. Eric refuses. As Eric prepares more booby traps, Gerard reveals Eric's whole backstory, including the fact that Gerard is actually Eric's father.
What?
Yeah. Gerard couldn't marry his mother, so she drank half an abortion potion, and it didn't take enough of it or something.
Either drink it all or don't drink it. Taking half is not a good plan.
So the baby didn't come out, quite right. Since then, Eric's been making all the decisions for the Opera House, and Gerard just basically was his mouthpiece. Anyway, Christine hears the whole true story, but refuses to leave Eric's dungeon. She's on his side. Gerard goes back upstairs alone. And he takes her, this is quite the scene, takes her on a picnic in he's got a little forest down there. of real trees. There's enough natural light trickling down, and just this awful menagerie of taxidermied animals staring at him, and they're just the mangiest looking things. But he's like, "Oh, it's so lifelike. Isn't this like being out in the woods?" And, Well, she asks to see his face, and he refuses. Nope, 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 not gonna. Well, she finally talks him into it, and she faints dead away.
With all the warning that people get with the Phantom of the Opera, you'd expect the worst. What could possibly be under that mask to be that bad that you couldn't prepare yourself for?
Yeah, that would make a young woman faint on sight. Yeah. I mean, yeah, she's young and naive, and it was simpler times before horror movies and all that, but still, really? Just taking the mask off and she faints.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, well, whatever. Yeah. Well, he goes off and has a temper tantrum, and he's just depressed and horribly upset about this. And she wants to leave now, so he locks her in a cell, but she gets out.
That's going to go well.
Yeah. Upstairs, Count Philippe and Gerard talk about Christine. Philippe is also in love with Christine. The two men take Christine out to the country, and she regrets everything. She wants to go back and make amends. Well, she goes back to the opera house and sings Faust for a real audience. It's excellent, and Eric hears all of it. And halfway through the show, from box 5, he starts singing along. And everyone sees and hears him, including the police, unfortunately, who have been searching for the Phantom.
The audience seems to think it's part of the show.
Yeah.
The police don't.
The police know better, yeah. The audience is thrilled, like, wow, this is interactive and everything. Yeah, they're digging it. Yeah. Well, everyone gets a standing ovation, and the cops come in shooting. So Eric grabs Christine, carries her away. Gerard gets his own gun as Eric and Christine run for the roof. And Philippe and Eric fight on the rooftop of the opera house. Eric ends up saving Philippe's life and gets Gerard to shoot him to end it all. And as Eric dies, she unmasks him and smiles with affection as she finally looks him in the face. The end.
Is that a happy ending?
Tragic and romantic. Well,
Okay.
It's a romantic ending for Philippe and Christine. And
All right. Well, the Phantom here has a habit of taking off his mask to reveal another mask underneath.
yeah, he did that more than once.
Yeah,
You think,
several
we're
times.
finally going to see his face.
And
nope,
there's
it's
another mask beneath
under
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the one he wears on his skin, and then he puts other ones on to show his mood.
Yeah, different costumes, different themes that he wears. Yeah.
Yeah, at no point do we ever see his real face. He's always turned away from the camera, and the scenery and sets were excellent, as this was actually filmed at the real Paris Opera House. The problem with most versions of Phantom of the Opera is that there's so damn much opera in them.
This one wasn't as offensive as some are.
No, there was a couple of brief scenes. There are multiple complaints about Eric about how awful a singer Carlotta is, but to our untrained, un-opera familiar ears, she sounded pretty much just as good as Christine. And Eric is the very definition of creepy stalker. In this version, he's more sad and pitiable than evil. The man who dies in the beginning was due to his own clumsiness. Eric's not really a murderer until well into the film. Christine even hugs him a few times. He's so friendly and nice that, hey, I'd probably date him, mask or not. Burt Lancaster gets top billing to go with his 15 minutes of screen time. In this version, he basically plays Alfred the Butler to Charles Dance's Batman. Yeah, I'd take care of you. I'll hold your secret. I'll be the front man. Dance, most well known for his portrayal of Tywin Lannister, although he's done a million other things, is fine here as Eric, but he's easily the least menacing of any incarnation of the Phantom ever. Alan and Carlotta can't decide whether they're going to be villains or comic relief, and they don't do either particularly well. He's mostly just silly, and she's just weird. But they were also the bad guys of the film, so whatever. It was created as a 2-part made-for-TV miniseries, and it's obviously padded to fill out that much time. It's really atrociously long and dragged out. Lingering shots of the opera house filling up unnecessary flashbacks, and of course, several opera tunes. Almost every single scene feels like it has some kind of filler in it to extend things. There were some strange additions and changes from the original story, but none of them are terrible. I mean,
And all in
Eric's
all,
father and all that
yeah.
was newly added.
If
And
you
that
want
was fine.
more of a romantic take than a horror take. It definitely leans more towards romance than horror.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
If you're really into the Phantom of the Opera story and lore, then you may really like this one, as you get to spend a lot of time with the characters and locations. But if you're looking for scares or thrills, go somewhere else.
And in answer to the musical, the first performance of Andrew Lloyd Webber's musical was 1986.
This was probably
was
made
4
in
years
response to that then. We want some Phantom. We want some Phantom.
More.
Yeah, they didn't have rights to the music at this point. All right, so now we go into a little bit of insanity with 2015's Darling. Written and directed by Mickey Keating, stars Lauren Ashley Carter, Sean Young, and Brian Morvant. Hour and 18 minutes. Trailer in the show notes. And what'd you think?
Well, it was black and white, which I think made it more interesting, and very interestingly filmed. But, yeah.
No?
Not a lot happened. Yeah, not enough happened.
Okay, something happened.
Stuff happened, yeah, but it was kind of slow, and I don't know. I didn't love it.
We start out in black and white and stay there for the whole film. I was expecting it to turn to color at some point when something happens, but no, it never does.
No, it doesn't, yeah.
It gives a kind of timeless, artsy look to a movie that would otherwise be pretty dull. And you're saying otherwise it was still dull.
A little bit.
There are long stretches with no dialogue and very little action of any kind, just Darling looking at various places in the house. It's a little vague.
See, I felt like there was too much of that.
There was a lot of that.
It's a big, cool house.
I think they were building up the loneliness aspect on
Yeah,
isolation.
they were, yeah. And she really sells the role. Lauren Carter is Darling. And,
Yeah. It's a little vague on when this takes place. There's no technology shown more advanced than an old-fashioned landline phone, and the clothes and hair indicated that maybe this was the 60s or 70s, and it was shot in a style very reminiscent of Psycho, so let's say it's supposed to be contemporary to that. It's weird, it's slow, and it's effective. Very creepy.
Certainly was creepy.
All right, so to get to the whole story, we start out with gritty black and white images of New York City. And again, probably 50s or 60s. The madam, this woman who owns the building and doesn't really have a name, pays Darling and leaves her phone number. Darling will be house-sitting for her, and she mentions that the house has bad stories and a bad reputation. She's honestly surprised that a young girl like Darling would want to stay there alone. Someone once killed themselves there. Alone now, Darling wanders through the big old house as credits roll. After the credits, she spends a great deal of time exploring the beautiful yet creepy house looking at things. There's one room that's locked and she's not able to get into it. Night falls. Darling dreams about climbing over the railing and jumping to her death. The next day she goes out shopping. She drops a necklace on the street, and when a man picks it up for her, she has flashes of him killing her. He apologizes for scaring her and walks away. She then follows him home and stares ominously at his building. You know, I think we should probably stop there on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I liked it better than you did, I think.
I think so. Well, I didn't hate it, but I think you enjoyed it a lot more than I did.
It's trying to be
Once
artsy and it's
it
trying
got
to be a little
going.
pretentious, but it actually does have a good story there.
And I really enjoyed the second half much more than the first.
It does take a while to get going.
I grew impatient. But once it finally does, yeah.
All right. And then we got 2022's Dracula, the original living vampire.
And this is one I think I liked better than you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Directed by Maximilian Elfelt, written by Michael Verratti, stars Jake Herbert, Christine Prudy, India Lily David, and Michael Ironside. Hour and 26 minutes.
Davies, I believe. India Lily Davies.
Yeah, what'd I say?
David.
Oh, Davies. Okay.
Yeah.
And there is a trailer in the show notes. Again, this is a new one, so you probably haven't seen it. You may want to keep the spoilers a little short on this one, but hey, there's Dracula in it, if you didn't figure it out.
Dracula.
It's a modernized retelling of the Dracula story with a confusing mishmash of anachronisms, poor script, excellent visuals, cool special effects, and a very mixed bag of acting. It's an interesting watch, both very entertaining and awful at the same time.
Not awful.
But you disagree.
I do, yeah. Am I to talk about it?
You could.
Well, I could talk about it now.
What do you like? Or,
Well, it's a fun modernized retelling of the story. A bunch of familiar characters in kind of new roles. And it's never quite clear completely what year it takes place. And there seems to be some anachronisms that are kind of obvious.
there really are very obvious.
There are carriages and candles. There's no electricity, but there's also modern wristwatches. And it looks like World War II era pistols and openly lesbian relationship.
Yeah, it's like they wanted to make this in the 1800s, but didn't have the budget or knowledge to do it right.
The language, the dialect seems very modern.
Well,
but
okay.
I mean, that's forgivable.
It's a movie thing.
Yeah, but I mean, that kind of is jarring too with the permanent, the simple technology. But yeah, and there's a lot of exposition, and speeches. Maybe a little bit too much exposition. A little
there's
too talky.
a lot of talking in this one.
Yeah.
As you know, Bob, vampires drink blood.
Well, yeah. But the lighting, cinematography, CGI, they all look really sharp and clean. Michael Ironside as Dr. Stewart is the only really recognizable face. And it's not one of his best performances, maybe, but, I mean, he's underutilized.
He needed a paycheck.
Well, yeah, but it's a small role, but I thought he did a fine job with it. First major role for most of the other actors. And the most noticeable update is that Van Helsing is a woman.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
Not the daughter of, the famous Van Helsing or anything like that. She's just it. No,
Yeah,
she's the
she
main
is
character.
Yeah. So smart, capable, brilliant police detective.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spoil it more than that.
Okay. Well, you're just reading my comments here. Before we haven't got into the story.
Well, I kind of skimmed over a little bit. Yeah. Well, there's vampire. I mean, it still follows the same basic story. Dracula comes to town looking for property.
It is the basic
Transylvania.
Dracula story. Yes.
Yeah. He's moving to the city.
All right. Well,
he falls in love with the girl and stalks the chicks and same basic premise.
You know the story. You've seen it before. This is the first major role for most of the actors, except for Ironside. For the most part, they do pretty well here with the script they've got. I specify. With one noticeable exception. It was all going really well. I was really happy with it until Dracula showed up.
Oh, don't diss the Dracula.
He is completely miscast.
Oh, he's not.
Oh, he looks like a teenage, I don't even know, off of one of those like Disney shows or something.
He was blending in.
In his more human form, he immediately made me think of a cosplayer or Renaissance fair actor. Yes, milady. That kind there. With the fedora in the afternoon.
Oh, pshaw. No.
Well, later in the film, Kevin says that Dracula reminded him of Meatloaf in that, that music video.
Yeah, I would do anything for love, that music video.
Or the Frankenstein character from the Penny Dreadful series. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he does definitely resemble that when he's fully, vamped up.
Yeah. But I think early when he's got a glamour, whatever, a glamour disguise.
But Dracula is supposed to have on-screen presence. He's supposed to be compelling. Women are supposed to want to romance Dracula. Men are supposed to want to be Dracula.
Powers.
He's supposed to have charisma.
He doesn't need
This guy doesn't need anything. This guy's got nothing. Okay.
Oh, I liked him in the role.
Okay, Kevin thought he was good for the role, blending in as a low-key, non-threatening human until the gloves came off. And I do think once he became, a monster, he was much better.
I do too, yeah. Well, that was his true self.
Overall, quality-wise, it's either a very well-made indie film or a very poorly done mainstream film. And that's pretty much it. It's a weird conflation of some really good aspects and probably what I would call horrible directing. It's kind of a mess. And the script is just way, way too talky.
Overall, though, I give it a thumbs up. I enjoyed it.
Overall, I give it a thumbs up, too. But I don't know that it really deserves it.
Less of a thumbs up than I do, I guess.
It was very creative.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then our big film this week that's got the giveaway attached. Remember, go to horrorbulletin.com, sign up there for our email newsletter. Then you could win a copy of The Changed from 2021, assuming you read your emails. All right, this one is directed by Michael Mangillo, written by Matt Gianni and Michael Mangillo, stars Claire Foley, Tony Todd, Jason Allen Smith, 1 hour, 18 minutes, and there is a link to a trailer in the show notes if you want to see what this one is about. And before I forget, let me mention that the terrifyingly suspenseful film The Changed is now streaming on Redbox. A bold and intriguing mix of horror and science fiction, The Changed tells how a group of ordinary people band together to battle imposters who have replaced their families, friends, and neighbors. Stream The Changed instantly on Redbox on demand today. Yeah, Redbox on demand is really convenient. It's pretty sharp for recent releases. Give that a shot.
Shall I read the spoiler-free judgment
Read
zone?
the spoiler-free judgment zone.
And you want me to read your quote? Okay, Brian.
Well, this is mine. Yeah, this is mine.
Brian says, quote, "A low-budget, generic, and dreadfully dull Invasion of the Body Snatchers ripoff," says Brian.
Well, Kevin says it reminded him of Body Snatchers and a bit like a 1991 film starring Mimi Rogers called The Rapture, and he thought it was pretty darn good.
I did.
So we're a little mixed on this one.
It's a kinder, gentler Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
It's a low-budget, talky version of the Body Snatchers. Yeah, they had, there's no special effects in this.
There's no body snatching going on.
There's no action in this. Nobody gets shot. Nobody runs down the street. Well, there's a little bit of running around.
There's some running and some fights, and there's some action, but yeah. But no, the special effects of actually seeing a pod, replacing a person, no, we don't see that.
Yeah.
And
okay.
it wasn't quite like that anyway. It seemed like it was more of a microorganism. Something, just
they
viral.
do kind of explain it as a bacteria kind of thing or something like that.
Yeah, passed by
There's
kissing.
no pods or any of that.
Passed by kissing, passed by saliva.
Yeah. So be careful who you kiss. It may be a changed.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I'm going to skip through the synopsis because you probably haven't seen it.
And we don't want to spoil it.
And, okay. Well, again, we've said it's Invasion of the Body Snatchers with a lot less action and a lot more paranoia.
Yeah, the paranoia starts creeping in. You meet these people.
Who is and who isn't.
Yeah, Tony Todd is a friend of the family. And
he obviously is converted. He's been changed.
Well, yeah, and you find out that he is.
But then the uncle comes over, and you're not quite sure about him.
Yeah, you wonder about people. And, the paranoia of wondering, if somebody's an exact copy. How do you tell?
Well, 5 minutes in, I thought it was like the attack of the self-help gurus. Tony Todd and the main actor are having this conversation outside, and he's all smiley and cheerful and peppy. And, he's one of those cheerful, happy people that you just want to smack. Stop being so damn cheerful. Well, there is an awful lot of telling and not showing as we're told about shootings and things going on outside the house, which is certainly a limitation of the budget. They couldn't have all those big set pieces of action on this.
Well, like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the invaded ones, the aliens, join us. It's good. We're all one.
And they're like that here for sure.
There's no war, but they amped it up in this, I think, even more. Like, it's beautiful and it's good and it's, we're all so happy and, even more so, I think.
Yeah, that's one of the limitation of the original, I think. The Body Snatchers, they never really made it clear why their way is better. These guys, they get into the reasons.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so the acting seems generally fine all around, but again, there seems to be a directorial issue here. Every scene is pure talking and really stretched out. Again, a little action wouldn't have hurt. Between the scenes of talking, we see shots of clouds blowing overhead. And these little transitions like that, they were dull. The music is extremely low-key.
They were ominous.
They weren't. It was clouds.
Okay.
And
they built the I thought the tension was built.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought the tension built.
And Kevin offers the counterpoint that he thought it was pretty entertaining. Not great, but a solid 7 out of 10.
Oh, at least. Yeah.
He wasn't bored.
I wasn't. No, I was entertained, and I thought it built, kept going, kept me interested. Everything a movie should be. Yeah.
You liked it. You gave it 7 out of 10.
At least. Yeah.
Don't regret watching it, but I was pretty bored throughout.
I would recommend it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey.
So enter to see your free copies, and if you're not able to get a free copy, check it out. and
Yeah.
decide for yourself.
And of course, if
And at least it's got Tony Todd. I mean, he's always watchable.
He's
no
got-
matter what he does.
we saw what did we see? Oh, Hellblazers
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to actually review next week. We haven't done the review of that one here yet.
Yeah.
But he was in that for like a total of 30 seconds, and his pictures on the cover of the DVD and all that. Here in The Changed, he does have a pretty significant role.
Yeah,
he shows
much
up in
more so.
multiple scenes, and he's very important here. Mm-hmm. So it's good that they actually used him.
Yes,
And that is our show for this week.
it is.
Stop back next week for 4 more horror films and a short. We'll actually have a short film next week. And one of them is going to be the one we just talked about, Hellblazers from
Yep.
2022.
Uh-huh.
And we'll have 3 other films and a short. I'm Brian,
And I'm Kevin.
and we'll see you next week.
See ya.